Good afternoon. Hello, Professor Barry Gilbertson. I've not seen you for a while. How are you?
I'm really bearing up well, I think, considering the lockdown and all that. It actually has its benefits as well as its detractions.
It's weird, isn't it? A lot of people are saying, and in no way is anyone saying the pandemic has been a good thing, but some things that have come out the other end are things that people want to keep hold of in the new life, I guess. Have you spent most of it in, have you been round in Bath or have you been elsewhere?
Entirely in Bath,
Ah.
actually. I think you're right about things that are coming out of it, which people do like. One of those, of course, would be less cars. Less cars means less pollution.
I mean, it's been obvious. It was very obvious. Certainly in lockdown 1 was my experience. The cars, and actually, at the risk of using a well-known supermarket's strapline, you could almost taste the difference in the air quality.
Well, every little helps, to quote.
Or every little.
Yes,
That's surprise. We're not sponsored, by the way.
No, absolutely not. No, I think that it gives the council, I hope it gives the council continued courage to carry on with their pollution beating measures, including things like livable neighbourhoods, which will make a significant difference to residents living in the city centre.
Yep, I'm not going to comment on that as mayor because, as you know, I'm civic and ceremonial, but I've heard people express that opinion. Perhaps for the people who are viewing who may be less familiar with you, could you explain your role really in terms of World Heritage?
Yes, of course. I chair the World Heritage Site, in effect. It's a voluntary role, and when I took it on 3.5 years ago, I was determined to be independent of the council, even though I'm appointed by the council. And it takes up a chunk of my time, obviously, difficult to say how much, but nonetheless, what the role entails, first of all, is chairing the advisory board. Now, the advisory board comprises something like 20 different organizations from national government level down through regional level into BANES, and it is therefore from the government that gets the World Heritage inscription, and they pass the responsibility down to the local area council, whichever that is, in amongst the 32 World Heritage sites in the UK. Then the council have to decide how to manage that responsibility. And that is the key. It's all about managing the World Heritage Site in order to enhance it, protect it, and pass it on to future generations. In order to do that, we have a 6-year management plan, which every single World Heritage Site has to have right across the world. And there are 1,121 World Heritage Sites now right across the world.
I didn't know that. That's an interesting fact.
Well, it's a lot, and it's probably more than people would imagine. But of course, there are 196 different what UNESCO call state parties, that is countries and territories. And they're very keen to try to involve every country in the world, if that's at all possible. The definition of becoming a World Heritage Site is that you must have one attribute of outstanding universal value. So you could be the Great Wall of China, for example, and its attribute is its amazing construction and the way it goes right across China. It might be the Great Barrier Reef, for example, again, with all the issues around coral and stuff, but it's a natural World Heritage Site. It might be the Taj Mahal. That's another World Heritage Site. And in 1987, the city of Bath was inscribed on the world list. And when I say the city of Bath, I actually do mean the whole city. The boundary of the World Heritage Site is the boundary of what was Bath City Council's administrative area. Now, being a World Heritage City, often people use that phrase, but only two cities in Europe can use that phrase.
I know the other one. I know the other one.
Go on then, take a team point.
Venice.
Venice, it is indeed Venice. And so we are almost unique, which is a great place to be. And there's no doubt that being a World Heritage Site has been superbly good for our tourism industry here in the city. Because if you travel around the world and want to travel around the world and pick up a brochure in the in the travel agents or in any appropriate website, what you'll see is that if you're going to a particular country, the organizers organize their tour by World Heritage Sites.
It's interesting. So in the days when we were allowed to do it, I joined in a few of the Mayor's Guides walks. And one of the questions that they ask as a sort of a bit of an icebreaker is, you know, where have you come from? And it also means they can make a little joke later on about, you know, people from that part of America, say, or wherever. And then they normally ask, and what drew you to Bath? And I would say all the times that I have been there, it has been because they've almost got a bucket list of World Heritage Sites, and Bath is on that list. So I know that's sort of anecdotal and not just data, but it was noticeable how many people immediately quoted. A couple of people said it was because of Jane Austen, but the vast majority, it was about the architecture and all that, and they only knew about it because it was on the list of World Heritage Cities.
Well, that to my mind, that's tremendously good news for us. Perhaps we could come back to tourism in a moment or two, because that is crucial to us in the city. But it's worth saying that we do have this outstanding universal value, which we call an OUV, and every single World Heritage Site must have at least one attribute, one OUV. Now, some have two, a few have three, and Bath has 6. And that gives in itself a pretty clear indication of the respect with which Bath is held on the world stage, and it's often held up as an exemplar based on getting the inscription in 1987, something, you know, now nearly 34 years ago. But from there, we've developed this system, and I took over what was then called a steering group, which is now the advisory board. And underneath the advisory board, we have a couple of working groups, and one of those is the Bath World Heritage Enhancement Fund.
Yes.
And what that does is it tries very hard to pick up and deal with small architectural, building, or other problems related to heritage, which are below the council's radar. And
I've spoken with many residents who find it, especially in the sort of the city centre where there's more listed buildings, and in order to do anything, you have to do it with absolute respect to heritage, and that sometimes doesn't come cheap.
No, indeed it doesn't. But it is true to say, though, that we tend not to work on private houses.
Sure. Yeah.
We have a very small budget. Until this year, the council has given us £25,000 a year, and the Bath Preservation Trust give us £5,000 a year. So £30,000 as a budget doesn't go very far, really, in terms of doing repair works and some items that I could tell you about. But what we do is we try to leverage off that money. Now, leverage is a financial term, but what it really means is bringing in other people's money to make our own money go further.
Well, I can give you an example. With my other hat on, we get Ward Councillor Initiative Fund, and I put some of my Ward Councillor Initiative Fund into the high pavement at Sydney Buildings, and you put some of your fund into the high pavement at Sydney Buildings. They did a little bit of fundraising, and between everybody, there's now nicely restored, redecorated railings that are absolutely authentic to how they were, because of the fact that you've managed to leverage through your grant other people putting more money in. So it's a model that works, Barry.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, because it does work. We reckon that we've received about £193,000 worth of money over the last 9 years or so. And we've spent something just over £600,000 in repairs around the city. And the most popular one, I think, is the street signs.
Yeah.
You'll know, I'm sure, that the street signs around Bath are generally at first floor level.
Yep.
Often they're inscribed into the stone, or they're a painted sign on the stonework, and they do deteriorate over time, obviously, with the weather. We've now done 58 of those.
Wow. Okay.
around the city. And last year we were enormously honoured and fortunate to get a national award from the Georgian Society for restoring at that stage, it was the first 50 that we had done.
Brilliant.
Now, you know, they cost between £1,500 and £2,000 each to restore, which is an amazing amount of money. But if you think about having to recarved in stonework and repainted, and time you think about a bit of scaffolding and health and safety and all the other things that building contractors have to deal with, that's why they cost that kind of money.
But it makes an absolute impact, doesn't it? And as you mentioned before, you might come back to the tourist thing. So question I'm fascinated by is, given the world that we're currently living in, and the fact that I think if anyone says they know exactly how this is all going to pan out, they've got a better crystal ball than anybody else, what's your sense about the role that heritage will play in Bath's future, specifically around maybe tourists, but in general? What do you feel?
Well, let's deal with tourism first. It is believed that it will take until 2024 to get anything like the same number of tourists back in the city. Some will say we had too many tourists in the first place. Some will say, but we need the tourists because that's one of our only industries which generate income. So if you take the first argument, 6.25 million people came to the city as tourists in 2018. In 2016, which was obviously just 2 years before that, it was 550,000 less. So, 5.7 million, raising up to 6.25 million in just 2 years. And if you think about 6.25 million coming to visit the city, and a city with a population of around 65,000 people who pay council tax, because obviously we do have a large student population, 28,000 or so, but they don't pay council tax. So that leaves you with a ratio of 95 visitors for every council tax paying resident. And if you think about the logistics of that, that's those visitors coming to the city actually erode our public realm. The footpaths, the roads, the grass areas, benches, all those kinds of things which the council have a responsibility to pay for, and which actually the council get relatively little from, other than from things like the Roman baths. So it's quite a big issue. And one of the campaigns that we've been looking at is how to really encourage what you might call cultural tourists, people who come to the city, go to museums, maybe stay overnight, go to the theatre, go to a restaurant and spend money, and compared to what I have been calling kiss me quick tourists that actually come on a coach, drive around, get out, take a photograph of the Royal Crescent, get back on the coach and go off to Stonehenge. They leave us nothing except their pollution. They don't leave any money at all. And that's a real problem for us, I think. And whereas at Venice, who, as you quite rightly said, have a whole city, they can charge people for coming into the city now. And in fact, they have started doing that in 2020. It's €3.60 a day to visit Venice. Now, the only ways into Venice are across the causeway in your car or a bus. You can come in on the train, or you can come in by boat. And you can capture money from them, but you can't do that with Bath. We've got all these different entrances in the city, and no simple way of doing that. So we have to find a better way of continuing to raise money for the benefit of the city to continue to keep our World Heritage Site looking like a World Heritage Site. And one of the good things, of course, is the Archway project, which you'll know a little bit about, I'm sure, putting in this new learning centre into Swallow Street behind the Roman Baths, and the shop that was on the ground floor on the corner of Swallow Street selling leather goods is on its way now to being completely transformed into a World Heritage Information Centre.
I mean, I think that's a brilliant thing, because again, what you need to do is, once you've got people here, the last thing you want is people going home saying, oh, I think Bath looks a bit tired or a bit tatty, or I couldn't find out any particular information. So, I mean, you can probably tell from my accent, and I think you know this, I am now a Bathonian and this is my home, but I'm not a native Bathonian. And I still get a frisson every time I walk. I mean, not that we're doing it very much at the moment, but I do try and take my daily exercise. Every time I walk along Great Pulteney Street towards the Guildhall, or I walk around Sydney Gardens, or I even go down some of the places, and it's interesting you say about the value thing, that some of the streets that probably don't even make it onto you must go and see the Circus, the Royal Crescent, or whatever, are really, really beautiful. Some of the back streets, you know, the fact that it's the whole city, and it's the whole city and it's the setting, it's the whole. It's not just, as you say, it's not just Pulteney Bridge, which is gorgeous in and of itself. And if it weren't in Bath, it may well just have got a World Heritage status as a thing. But it's not the thing, it's the fact we've got all of the 6 attributes that make us so special.
And actually bringing it a little bit back to the lockdown, I think it's going to be interesting if you could ever find out the answer to the question of how many people have started walking around our city because of lockdown, because of getting daily exercise, and seen lots of different streets, buildings, vistas that they never saw before because they were too busy, they were in their car or whatever it was. And that the difference between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2 really is the schools are open, the universities are open, and so you do get some more traffic than we had before. But even so, I go out for my daily walk and I see lots of people each day. Some you see the same people, just nod, say hello. And I've noticed this time in lockdown, the number of people who are more chatty. Actually, not so much chatty, that's saying too much, but they're very willing to say, hello, how'd you do? Everything all right? You know, that kind of thing, which actually shows Bath like a big village rather than a city.
I mean, I don't know if you saw, obviously we didn't have a mayor making in the way that we traditionally do, but we did do an online Zoom mayor making. And my theme for the year, which I'd chosen actually before we'd even heard the word COVID or coronavirus, was about combating loneliness. And about the full theme is combating loneliness, Bath, the friendly city. And again, maybe it's my northern upbringing, but I've always nodded and smiled at people in the street, and sometimes you get a response and sometimes you don't. I think one thing that I've certainly learned from lockdown is I consider myself quite an independent person. I really miss, I think at nature we're all social animals. I really miss the contact that you get from seeing someone. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a really good friend, although I miss them terribly, but just that quick, you bump into someone who's walking the dog and you say, gosh, they're coming back better than they did last week. And they say, yeah, I've got some treats in my pocket. And then you have a smile and a nod, keep your social distance and you move away. Somehow that's made your day better.
Yes, I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. I found it really interesting. And actually the university asked me if I would give them a video log when this lockdown is over of the things that happened around me. Some of it related to the university perhaps, but just what's happened. So I've been keeping a daily diary.
Right, interesting.
Which is, yeah, I looked back at it this morning, knowing we were going to be talking today. I looked back at it this morning and it is interesting to see how people have responded. Just those little things, you know, and not everybody is afraid of the rain, and that's for sure.
No.
You know, people are determined to get out there. It's been really nice to see that actually a lot of people are walking as couples. because that's allowed, of course, but it is nonetheless nice to see. People are out there walking their dogs, of course, but they probably do that most days anyway. So I found it really interesting to see the increasing number of people out just getting some exercise. And when the sun's shining like it is today with beautiful blue sky, that, you know, that the blue sky sets off our beautiful Bath stone.
Doesn't it? And when the sun catches it at just the right angle, it's almost luminescent, isn't it? You can't beat it anywhere.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the Royal Crescent.
No.
You know, it can be any of the fantastic buildings. You know, I just walking around the other day, I came across something I hadn't seen before, and you just think, wow, there's another really interesting little site and another vista that you just hadn't seen before.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Do you know, we could talk all day, but I don't think we should, unfortunately. Well, thank you so much for your time. Lots of interesting facts in there, which I think people will really enjoy, I hope. And can I, on behalf of the City of Bath, which I can say as Mayor, thank you for what you do. I know it's a voluntary role, and I know it takes up a lot of your time, and I know you're a busy man doing other things as well, but it is hugely appreciated, because I think even if people don't vocalise it this way, they appreciate the heritage of Bath as one of the key things that draws them to Bath, even if that's what they don't necessarily say it in that format. So thank you, Professor.
Oh, that's really kind. It's always nice to be appreciated, but if I could say before we finish, you know, prior to COVID and the lockdown, I was working my way around the city, giving a free talk to any organisation that wanted to have a speaker for a 45-minute talk about Bath, its World Heritage, and why it's so important to our economy to have a World Heritage designation. And when lockdown finishes, I'll be very happy to be back talking to people. They can contact me via the Bath World Heritage website.
We'll put a little link up at the end of this video as well.
That'd be great, because I've already given the talk to something over 2,200 people, which is fantastic, because when I came into the role, I was really concerned that not enough people knew enough about World Heritage and our status within it. So if people would like to contact me and try and book it in, we'll be delighted. Either me or Tony Crouch, the World Heritage Manager, will come and talk and be delighted to share this information with everybody.
Brilliant. And if we end up having lockdown after lockdown after lockdown, you might have to think about doing the 45 minutes as a video and then do a Zoom call and have questions afterwards. But for now, can I thank you so much for your time? Really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. Bye-bye.